I am going to go ahead and get started.
We have a quorum
Hi,
in the forum.
everyone. I am Kaya Walton, Director of Analytics for Voice of America, and one of the Adobe Analytics Champions. I'm going to let my fellow champions introduce themselves, and then we'll get right into answering some questions.
Okay.
I guess I'll go next.
Sure.
I'm Jen Dungan. I'm the optimization manager analytics for Torstar, which is basically a newspaper company up here in Canada. So I deal with mostly media companies, but pretty much everything related to, all the little offshoots that go along with newspapers and, various digital assets.
Okay. And I am Jeff Bloomer. I am the digital analytics manager for Kroger Personal Finance, which is a division of Kroger, which, if you haven't heard of us by now, we're just one of the largest grocery retailers in the United States. KPF, we do gift cards, credit cards, money services. Fun stuff, actually, to do digitally for Kroger. So, and that's what I do at Kroger Personal Finance.
All right, Megan.
You're
muted.
Oh, you're muted.
Classic.
Story of my life. I'm Megan Powers. I work at CarMax. We're the U.S.'s largest used car retailer. I've been here about 9 years. I lead a team called Digital Data Strategy here at CarMax, and we are responsible for collecting every piece of digital data that CarMax owns, with Adobe Analytics as our primary source of truth for quantitative data. I'm a second-year champion. Happy to be here to answer everyone's questions.
Kat.
Hey guys. Oh, my voice. Sorry, I'm just coming over a cold, so excuse a little bit of raspiness. But I'm Kat, product analytics manager at Shift Labs, which is a data analytics consulting agency based out of Toronto, Canada. I'm 2x Adobe Analytics Champion. I'm happy to be here and answer any questions for you guys.
All right, help you feel better. So a couple of logistics items before we jump into the questions. Reminder that the session is being recorded and will be available on the Adobe User Group's YouTube channel. And also, we have only a couple of pre-submitted questions. So if you want to enter your questions into the chat, that increases. Today is the day, because that will increase the chances that we will get to those questions. And so while we're waiting for those questions to come in, I'm going to jump right ahead to the first question. It's about third-party tagging and performance. When we get issues about third-party tagging and performance of those tags have been reported consistently as increase in volume than expected, where would you start troubleshooting on Adobe Analytics end?
Are you able to type that in the chat?
Yeah, I will.
I'm a reader.
Or we can even, share the screen if anyone wants to, jump in and start putting anything into that workspace. Now, I guess it kind of depends on whether the question is talking about using a third-party system that forwards the information off to Adobe, or whether you're just using a third party to facilitate traditional tagging. So both ways are kind of possible. And I'm not exactly sure the person who submitted this question, hopefully they're here, is actually using. Because there's obviously a couple of different ways that people can be using the system. If you are seeing, consistent increase, much higher than usual volume, it's still usually the best to go back to your website to try and figure out what is being sent to the system, whether you are using something like Segment to collect the data and pass that, back to the server and then to Adobe, or whether you're using some sort of tag manager to add the JavaScript files for Adobe onto your site, and you're triggering the s.t or s.tl calls. First and foremost, what are you actually sending from your web page? Are you seeing inflation there? or is everything looking clean? And of course, doing this in a test environment, a dev or QA, where you can actually isolate yourself, see what you are sending to the system, see what is resulting in the data an hour later, unfortunately. Now, again, if you are using, direct Adobe and you can use the Adobe cloud tools, you can sometimes see exactly what's going on there. Though the cloud debugger has not been working properly for several months with the post-process data, because sometimes being able to look at the post-process data is obviously going to be very helpful. That's only going to work if you're sending data directly to Adobe, where it's seeing the Adobe call and it's connected into your Adobe suite via login, and then it's passing back exactly what's happening, because you may have Vista rules or post-processing rules that are doing something weird on the Adobe side. This is such an open-ended question, because I don't know exactly the setup, and I don't know exactly, which tools you're using or what method you're doing. But again, first things first, test as much as possible. Try to isolate where that inflation is occurring. Usually it's coming from your site, triggering multiple calls, but it may be farther down the chain, and that is definitely a harder spot to detect it. And then it really comes down to what technology you're using. Is it a third-party system like Segment, which is collecting the data and maybe it's forwarding off way too much information, or double sending data to you? That one's going to be a lot harder to detect, and I'm not sure how you actually test that without knowing which system. Do you guys have thoughts on this?
I'm typing some. I'll post those in a second, and then I'll read them out. Let's see.
Jeff, I know it saw you nodding along rather than having dead airspace. Do you have any thoughts on what I was saying? Nope, no, nothing at all.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start reading mine. Okay, so like my team, for example, implements third-party codes, and we do that through Adobe Launch in addition to our first-party codes. So, I would always check your third-party Adobe Launch rules. Sometimes those can be separate from your first-party, or sometimes they're together depending on your implementation. Check any corresponding first-party data to see if you see similar increases. So, if you have stuff going to a certain page, for example, do you see more traffic to that page? Or if your third-party codes are implemented in the same rule as a first-party piece of data, check that first-party piece of data, see if it's going up. You can use Analysis Workspace for stuff like that. Any tagging, bug troubleshooting, always finding the day that something started increasing is a really helpful step. That can just help you narrow down. You can go back to Adobe Launch. Did we release something that day? Or talk to your marketing teams, like, did they change something that day? Or did the third-party partner change something that day? Or did our site just start a big promotion or some big campaign or something else weird going on in the world that might have affected that? And then usually, your third-party campaigns are going to have some kind of tracking code, UTMs, or whatever your company uses for tracking codes. See if you can get the tracking codes associated with that campaign, and isolate one or two of them maybe causing the problem, or see if you can replicate the same behavior with those tracking codes in Analysis Workspace in Adobe. Those are some general troubleshooting tips that I can offer without knowing, a ton more details.
Jeff, you were muted earlier. Did you have something to add?
No.
Just as a follow-up to that, since the Adobe debugger isn't working well for post, do you recommend using a third-party alternative?
As far as I know, there is no third-party alternative to getting post-process data, because that is specifically authenticating yourself into your Adobe data to get data back. However, without the post-processing data, the cloud debugger is working fine. You can use things like Omnibug. You can use direct into your network tracking to read through it. Now, the network tracking, it can be a little weird when you're looking at all of the parameters because your props come through as C number, your EVARs come through as V number, your hierarchies come through as H number, your lists as L number. But once you get onto those designations, it becomes second nature to you. I started testing that long before we had all the fancy testing tools. So I'm quite versed in testing from the network panel. It's just the post-processing data is really nice because it actually kind of gives you that immediate feedback as to what Adobe saw, how the data was changed, particularly if you have processing rules in place that take a value such as X and convert it into X plus Y. So it's helpful if you have those processing rules at the server side level to help give you context to what's happening. If your implementation is simple, you probably don't need the post-process because what you're passing through should be exactly what you get on the other side. But everyone's implementation is a little bit different. So I can't really say one way or the other what's good. Honestly, I think we should just all bug Adobe and say it's broken, please fix it.
Open a ticket.
Yeah, put in I really should. I've been meaning to put in a ticket and I just haven't gotten around to it.
Okay, so question. What sort of solutions do people have bringing workfront data into Adobe Analytics?
Ah.
The person's new to the team and they've been relying on classifications, but it is manual and time consuming. Are there any other suggestions for this? Megan, I think you started answering, and then we'll open it up.
Yeah, I have not used Workfront personally, but the person mentioned classifications, but maybe they're doing it more manually. Maybe the classification importer might be a faster way to do that, because then you're just uploading it maybe once or multiple times, but
I also don't have Workfront, but maybe we can get a little bit more information about what information in Workfront you're trying to classify. I mean, maybe they are using the classification importer and they're manually having to change the FTP, whereas maybe regex rules based on consistent naming conventions in Workfront might be sufficient, or maybe it's the other way around. I'm not sure. Unfortunately, without knowing much about Workfront data and what it looks like, it might be a little bit hard for me to, for all of us, because does anyone here use Workfront? No, I'm seeing a bunch of shaking head. Yeah, and that's the hard part.
My company does, but I haven't personally used it. Maybe I'll Google real quick. I don't know.
And I mean, an implementation is as simple or as complex as you make it or you need it to be in certain cases. So maybe there's other ways that you can send the data through a little bit more structured that makes your life easier. Maybe there isn't. I'm not sure. Maybe there's even an export functionality from Workfront that would allow you to import it for the classification importer easier. Or maybe to create like some sort of, or work with your developers to get raw data out of Workfront to manipulate it, create it into a format that would be ingestible by the classification importer, so that it's a little bit more automated as opposed to manual. I hope that's helpful. And again, sorry, I feel like a little bit of the blind leading the blind here because I just don't have familiarity with that tool.
Yeah, you might be able to use data sources as another way to import information. Again, not super familiar with Workfront, but I don't think data sources is limited in terms of which offline sources you can bring in. Should be just another offline source.
A follow-up from them, they are using the classification importer currently, but as new data comes in, there is a need to automate this going forward. I was wondering if there's an API connection that could work for this, but I am new to Workfront as well.
Maybe in the developer console, there could be an API connection.
Yeah.
For Workfront, and there may already, like I was just Googling to see, there may already be kind of an established thing. There also, maybe in Adobe Launch, there might be an extension already built, since it is an Adobe product. So those are two places to check. I would check out data sources. I would check 3-place data sources. I would check out developer console, and I would check out what did I just say?
You can even check Experience League. There is a forum for Workfront. Now, I know you're talking specifically about analytics. I mean, I don't see any problem with cross posting, but maybe talk to people who are actually working in Workfront and see what they've done. See if they've got any suggestions for facilitating that. That's another place that you can kind of look to try and see, from that perspective, if anyone's been using the two tools in conjunction.
So I don't know if this is helpful or not, but I'm putting a link in here right now. Might be barking up the wrong tree, but I just found this link. This might be something that they've already found. I've been told that there are integrations, whatever, with Workfront. This article that I literally just found, getting started with enhanced analytics with Workfront, but this is just, I don't know if this is an integration. I just literally went and found this, but I don't know if this is necessarily gives you the ability to integrate. So it may be just something that I'm just finding that's related to the reporting. However, I was thinking that there was an ability to also, like I said, integrate with Adobe Analytics as a side to, as I'm looking at this, it just says enhanced analytics. But I was thinking that there was also a way to truly integrate Adobe Analytics with Workfront as well. So I remember even saying something when we were talking to the sales rep a while back. So you might talk to your sales rep, to your Adobe rep. I mean, not having the direct answer to give you, I would say talk to your Adobe rep, because I know that they said something to me when we talked to them about having the ability to bring stuff directly into Adobe Analytics. So beyond having that direct knowledge, and I could, like I said, I could be wrong. I'm probably wrong with that particular link that I just grabbed. So,
well, it makes sense that there should be some sort of integration and probably some sort of API. The only thing is you'd need to look probably at the higher level APIs, not necessarily the analytics API, but maybe the larger Adobe APIs that would reach into multiple products.
Yep.
Okay. And I think Megan also shared a few other links on the chat as well. I did see, I know it's not Adobe Analytics. I did see a question on Experience League that just came in a couple months ago about CGA and Workfront. And the answer to that was, we currently do not have a CGA connector. However, customers can connect to CGA using an Adobe Authenticator app or Universal Connector. So if you're also looking for CGA solution to connect to Workfront, that's the current answer. So next question. This is also pre-submitted. It's a two-parter, and it's about engagement clicks. First one, how do you count total engagement clicks on the page? And second is, how can we count total links clicks fired only one unique event, let's say event 99 only, but not included multiple events like event 99, event 98, etc. occurred. I also added it to the
Feels
chat.
like a very loaded question.
Yeah.
I mean, we got time.
It's like, okay, first of all, when somebody says engagement clicks on a page, it's like, what exactly are they truly meaning engagement clicks? First of all, I'm going to say, if you're wanting to understand engagement on a page, if you want somebody to engage with something on a page, put something that you want to engage with them, engage with first of all, and then tie an event to it. Because if you're just wanting to say how much are they engaging with the page, I'm going to say you're looking for fuzzy metrics. That's what you're looking for, because you didn't do either you had a marketer that's saying what's somebody doing with that page. I'm like, guess what? We didn't ask good business questions to begin with on that particular page. That's the first thing I'm going to say. And then, yeah, I see Jen is just like over there, like squirming because she's going to say the same thing. And then I think all of us are kind of thinking the same thing. And then second of all, it's okay. Then does somebody else want to take number two? Because I'm just like sitting here going.
Well, I still want to address number one.
Go ahead. Address number one. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, in addition to everything that you were saying,
yes,
I also try to avoid adding all these specific clicks everywhere on my site because it inflates your server calls. I actually use Activity Map for 95% of our clicks, and I only track the actual click data on very specific items, such as clicking on buttons that go to our subscribe page, because that's part of our subscription flow. So it's, in part of our fallout, it's like, oh, somebody actually clicked on the CTA. Then somebody, filled in the form. Then they proceeded to this step, so that I can have this nice, clean picture in conjunction with which buttons did they click on, because we have a lot of logic to present button A to this group and button B to that group and button C and variants and all that fun stuff. So I use the clicks on those because I really need to tell which button, which variant, which whatever was actually being presented to the user and what was being clicked on. But for most of our clicks, I just rely on Activity Map. Now I get it. Activity Map out of the box isn't necessarily the best, because the regions grab on to like the closest ID from your developers, which tend to be not very readable. But there are ways that you can make Activity Map work better by defining your own regions. So I actually have our main menu defined as a main menu. I have our content blocks for opinion, for news as news, so I've actually broken out our site into well-named regions. So when people engage with it, I know what link they were clicking on, what region of the page they were clicking on, and what page. So I get most of my engagement that way. And it does now prevent me from sending all of these additional server calls, which is going to inflate costs.
Yeah.
So that's
one caveat. What about those of us who are doing server side who aren't using Activity Map?
Yeah, well, that one is trickier. Technically speaking, I mean, you could probably write some custom code to store something in a session variable, use that session variable, clear it, and so on and so forth. Now there's always potentially options, but again, I try to avoid additional server calls whenever possible, because we just don't have the budget for tracking everything. But it gives us the ability to see most of what people are clicking on. There's a few caveats. I'm not even going to go into those. It's more along the lines of developers just not coding out the website well formed and not using anchors. Now,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I saw.
No. Please.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. Few things I have on this topic. One, you guys were mentioning that if you're doing server side and SDK, you can't do activity map. I just saw a release note a couple weeks ago that is now maybe possible, and to save on server calls in the SDK, you can combine your click tracks on the next page load, so it won't accrue additional server calls.
I think it still accrues the server call. It just stitches it to the page view event.
I'm not sure, like, it said something like, so you can save on your input. I don't know. It's still in beta. We're investigating it as we speak, so I don't know a ton. But I did see that it's in the latest Adobe release notes. If anyone wants to go check out that feature.
Yeah, I think I saw that too. I hadn't had a chance to look into it yet.
Yeah, so it seems pretty cool. So it might solve some of the activity map type issues with SDK and the server call issue. I replied to that comment, linked to a blog article I wrote about this a couple of years ago, which was my Rockstar submission way back in 2018. But the way we do it is that we do a lot of custom click tracking, because activity map, for some various reasons, doesn't work great on our site, and so we've had to do a lot of this custom click tracking. It's in the blog article, but we use a series of kind of 4 props. One always captures the page name, one always captures the link name, one always captures the link position, which I'll talk about in a second, and one concatenates those 3 things together. So that allows us to slice and dice the data in a lot of different ways. You can look at page name, look at all the clicks. You can look at maybe link name. Maybe there's one that says get pre-qualified on 20 different pages. Or you can look at the most granular thing in the concatenated version. And then we use the link position in a variety of ways. So if you have the same link with the same name on the same page, we use it to differentiate those. We use it like Jen was mentioned, where you have like one kind of rolled up category, things that are well defined, like header, footer, like big link farm in the middle of the page, where you don't want to add up 20 things, but you want to see general engagement with that area. We also use it to determine someone's what they've selected upon hitting submit. Sometimes we'll have like a radio button, like, are you applying with a cosigner, yes or no? But we don't want to track every time someone's clicked yes or no. We just want to capture their status when they click submit. So we'll use our prop 5 to say, like, did they say yes? Did they say no? But anyway, what I was able to do is use Report Builder, real throwback, with all those, and this is what the blog post describes, and make our own like automated heat map that just can refresh upon click of a button. So that's been really helpful for us. Again, that does accrue server calls. If Activity Map works for your site, I would say use that. But Activity Map doesn't work great for our site, so we go this route instead.
Yeah. Well, I should mention, when I use Activity Map, I don't actually use the plugin. I have not used the plugin for years. I look at the Activity Map data 100% through Workspace.
Through Workspace, yeah, okay. Yep.
Because I find the interface, the plugin, slow, and well, with news stories change 20 times a day. Like, I mean, trying to look at the homepage and seeing what people are doing, it's not reliable. But when I look at it, from a workspace, I can see everything that was engaged with, or I can just look at regions. I can go, okay, are they engaging with the main menu and the content in the order that it's coming down the page, and go, look, people are only engaging with the top half of the page. Because I know what order the content is coming through in. So again, I do it all through data, not the interface.
Yeah.
I think before we move on from this first part of the question, I just want to circle back to Jeff's point at the start. Like, finding out what the actual KPI is for that page is probably the most important part of, like, before you go into like building out all of these metrics. Because at the end of the day, like, if it's just like a click engagement rate, isn't that just like a 1 minus a bounce rate or a 1 minus an exit rate? So really sitting down with your stakeholder and saying, like, what do you really want to optimize from this page versus just saying any click is a good click on that page.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate and advocate for empty space clicks because there is such a thing as rage click or dead clicks, and
Rage
you want to
click. I love
know
that.
what those are. Because sometimes when you have audiences whose connectivity is slow and your page weight is significantly
love it.
big and they're clicking around hoping and praying it loads, it is a thing. But as everybody mentioned, that could also significantly add to your cost. So there are other tools or other ways that you can work around it. So just advocating for my empty space clicks.
I love it. I love the rage click.
I'm keeping that term for all time, the rage click.
Yeah. The rage click rate. Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it staying constant?
You just added emoji there. Following up with the second question to that one, how can we count total links, clicks, fired only one unique event, let's say event 99 only, but not including multiple events that have occurred?
I've been trying to wrap my head around this question.
Yeah, because the event itself would be the click. Like, so if you've got, okay, again, I'm going to use like, my site, for example. If I have click tracking on my subscription CTA and I've got click tracking on my sign up for newsletter and I have click tracking on my look at the digital edition of the papers, those are 3 unique clicks. I might have a unique event for each of those. So event 1, event 2, and event 3. Well, event 1 corresponds to CTA, like the subscription CTA. Event 2 corresponds to the newsletter, and event 3 corresponds to the digital edition. Now, if you are using, say, event 1 for all 3 of those buttons as a engagement click, then hopefully you have some sort of dimension value that gives them distinction. So either your custom link name or potentially custom link name plus another EVAR or plus a pro or whatever. But you can always create segmentation going event 1 and EVAR 1 equals this or contains this to, give yourself, like a smaller bucket from those events.
So is there an ability though? Because I wonder if they're trying to say, like, are they saying like a per visit type thing? So how can we count total link clicks only one unique event? In other words, I'm almost wondering if they're saying like at the visit level. In other words, so that's what I'm almost wondering is like maybe we could go ahead and say visit or even maybe visit horror. I don't know. That's where I'm trying to like delimit this, for that. So event 99 or event 98, whatever they're saying. So it's like, because I think we could say, okay, if that event 99 happened just at the visit and we cut it off, then we could expire it.
Yeah.
And then do it that way. And
well,
say,
actually, you can do this with a calculated metric. And I've actually done this. So let's say I've got CTA buttons, and let's say Jeff comes to my site and he clicks that CTA 20 times. But I want to say, I just want to know the unique visitors who have clicked on event 99, which is my subscription CTA.
Once per visit.
What I will do is I will create a segment which says per visitor or visit, depending on what scope I need to look at. And I say event 99 exists. That will get me the visit or the unique visitor that interacted with that event. And they had at least one. It exists. It could be many. It could be whatever. And then I pair that segment, stack it with visit or unique visitor metric, and that will get me my unique visitor. Per event 99.
Another thing we do is for every event, we actually fire 2 events. And on the back end in Adobe Admin, we have like events 1 through 500 as the always, and we haven't used 500 events, but 1 through 500 as the always counted, and the 500 to 1,000 version of that same event as the once per visit count.
Yeah.
That allows us to answer, so the car page on our site is our most popular page, and many people look at many car pages, but not everyone looks at a car page. So if we try to divide like our car page view event by visits, we'd get over 100%. But that doesn't answer the question of what percentage of users viewed a car page. So then that's event 3. So we take 503 and divide that by visits, and that gives us like what percent of visits viewed a car page versus how many car pages were viewed total.
Very nice. I love being able to divide things up like that.
Yeah.
That makes me wonder. Migrating something like that over to CJA. I haven't even thought about how that's even, if that's even still a possibility. I have to look into that because I'm still learning a lot about CJA.
But Megan, with your thing, like we do the same thing, but again, I just use a segment to isolate the unique visitor or the unique visit, and then I divide it by the total visits. Like I get basically the same sort of thing by using one event counter, but you can do it so many different ways. That's the beauty of Adobe, is that be creative.
Yep.
Sorry, I know the conversation's Adobe Analytics. I shouldn't mix topics, but it's all right. We're in the process of doing that at Kroger, so my mind is starting to go there. So,
no, that's good to keep in mind. I mean, build for the future.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say like with anything in Adobe, there's a ton of different ways to do it. Usually, pick the one that you think works best for you all, and as long as you're measuring that consistently over time and doing other metrics consistently kind of the same way, then there's no one like perfect answer, but you do want to be consistent about it.
No, I'm just saying I liked the approach, and it's it's like as we're moving forward, I was like, will that still work? So that's made me think.
All right, next question from Ravi Koya. Hello, champions. I'm new to Adobe Launch and would like to start learning it. Can you guys suggest the best resources that are available online that can refer to and start learning it for beginners?
I mean, my typical response, excuse me, is you could probably just Google Learn Adobe Launch. And, I know Adobe Analytics has the YouTube channel. I would imagine launch videos are in there, or at least, just a minute, please. And school starts next week, y'all. And but I imagine they have some launch videos in there, and probably just knowledge base is really good about having training tutorials and stuff. I know I've seen them out there before, but my personal first step would go just Google those, and I'm sure you could find a bunch. Also, if there are any developers on your team or anyone who currently uses Adobe Launch, like they're probably a great internal resource to just, show you what they're doing as well.
Yeah. I can't think of any specific resources. Experience under the Adobe Analytics umbrella is a great place to ask questions if you have something specific you want to ask. Going and asking an open-ended question like, how do I learn Launch is probably going to be way too big for such a forum. But of course, we're all there. We're happy to help, lead you through specific questions or provide advice. The thing is, with Launch, just like Adobe Analytics, there's 1,000,008 ways to do anything. And depending on the complexity of your implementation or what you need to do, you can go simple, you can go complex, you can use all pre-built extensions, you can write custom code. There's such a spectrum for which to use that tool that, there's so many different ways that you can leverage it. And I know that's not terribly helpful. I know that Adobe probably has some learning materials, some videos up on YouTube. When they first did Launch, I remember seeing them, and it did like very simple walkthroughs of, add this extension and do this configuration and, do this. That may be too simple for what you need. But again, stuff like that is a good starting point to sort of get your feet wet. And then you can start asking specific questions like, I'm trying to do X. How do I do that in this tool? Or can anyone tell me how this particular extension works? I think it's what I need, but I don't know how to use it. Or, does anyone have any best practice tool tips for doing, this type of implementation? Again, I mean, we could probably spend 2 hours doing an entire walkthrough of doing an implementation with launch from, start to almost end, which might be actually a good user group session for, user group leaders here. Jeff, maybe this is something we might want to try and take a look at, like doing a simple implementation 101. But of course, it's really hard to, without screens and materials waiting to step you through in a logical order, it's kind of hard to answer such a big question right now.
Jessica actually shared a link to Learning Launch, and then I also shared a link to a course, a 1 hour course to get you started on Launch as well. But Ravi has a follow-up question. Can we create a new account or property like GA4 with our Gmail?
Technically, yes. I mean, so Launch is actually less strict than, GA. GA, GTM, they all require that you have a Google account. However, Adobe will let, depending on your company's system, because sometimes, your company wants all work emails or all federated email, whatever. But with the Adobe admin console, you can create an account for any email. So you can create one with your Gmail or whatnot, give it the permissions for launch, and then go in and actually create your properties, with the correct permissions on that account. You probably want to keep it to a work email, because when somebody's going through the admin console and they see a bunch of personal looking emails with Gmail, they might be tempted to just erase them and remove access because they're not work emails and they don't know who you are. Or, it might be ilovecats@gmail.com. Well, somebody looking at that's going to go, who is this? I don't know if they should have access. I don't know if they still work for us. Let's just blow it away and see who complains. Things like that. But you absolutely, with the proper permissions granted to you within the admin console, you can of course go in and create, whatever you have, just as long as you have the right permissions. Now, if you don't have it today, I don't think there's a sandbox for you to go in and create anything, unfortunately. So if you're looking for like, hey, I just want to go in and get my feet wet, I mean, I would love if Adobe had something like that. It would be great for people just to go in and get a feel for the system, for actually doing that back end management. Right now, I believe the only sandbox they have is Workspace, using sample data that has been provided by Adobe and going in and being able to build reports. They haven't actually opened it up to being able to create your own dimensions and configure your own settings and create your own launch property and, actually play end to end. But if your company has such a thing, again, feel free to spool up a test demo suite and a test demo launch property and a test demo, report in your workspace and play with it. I actually have one. That's where I go and I test stuff that I'm not sure how it's going to work. I create like a little simple HTML file and I pass information through and I go and see what it's doing in my demo site and see if it's doing what I need it to do before I ask developers to do stuff. So.
Okay. Just for everybody that is attending, we have about 15 minutes left. So enter your questions so we can try to fit it in. Question from Jessica. Question for the Hive Mind. I have a situation where a segment of pages is receiving a high volume of visits from a single US location which the product lead does not recognize as a significant concentration of customers. It appears to me this may be a catch-all of visits by ISP perhaps. My hunch is it's related to a manufacturing facility slash employee traffic, but I can't prove or disprove this easily. It's a good mix of desktop and mobile, and page behavior indicates it's legitimate traffic. No unusual behavior occurring within this segment for an obvious answer, and it's driving me crazy.
So, I if you haven't put on IP obfuscation or
Yep.
hiding the last octet, while you can't get the IP address directly in Workspace, if you use the data warehouse, you can export IP addresses. So you can actually put in, geolocation data, ISPs, page views.
Yep.
You can try to get that information out where you can see the IP, and then you can actually use something like maxmind.com to look up that IP address. I'm gonna put that link in for you, but essentially you can look up the IP address and it should tell you information about the domain, whether this is potentially some company that, it might be a company that's like going through all VPN, so it could be worldwide traffic going to like one little hub, which is then sending traffic to you. It could be an ISP, which is just funneling all of the traffic through one core location. It could be a bot. It could be something. But looking up that IP address can help give you a little bit more information about what's going on and try to understand what's happening. If it does end up being like a bot and suspicious, you can then put in an IP exclusion rule into your bot traffic rules for that IP or IP ranges that the traffic is coming from.
Yeah, we used to, once upon a time, we actually had a processing rule that actually separated our internal and external traffic. We ended up removing it when we weren't able to collect the data anymore. But it was actually really nice to be able to see our internal, Kroger people separated from all the other external traffic and say, okay, we know these are Kroger people versus everybody else. Can't do it anymore, but because of certain obvious reasons. But yeah, I understand I feel your pain, but but yes, being able to do what Jen just said, taking things out, using the data warehouse, that would be a definite first step. And then if you can bring it back in using classification data, and then however you want to look at it that way, that may help you out.
So we use the exclude by IP ranges as well, but we're also applying like a global filter to all reporting for the suspicious traffic we want to exclude based off of like domain and user regions and some of the more broader things, because IPs can change and switch up and bots are pesky and annoying. And another call out though is to see if your IT team can block that traffic before it's hitting Adobe. So trying to see if they have any other mechanisms to block that traffic up top before it hits the Adobe data and blows up your server calls.
The opposite of whitelisting.
Yeah. The only thing is if you do it as like a bot filter, while it might be inflating your server calls, it can actually give you a sense of, is that traffic increasing? Is it decreasing? Is it changing over time? Because you can actually get bot reports, very simple ones, but you can get your bot identification by pages or just by page views, which can allow you to monitor that. So it's kind of a bit of a double-edged sword. It excludes it from your basic reporting once it's in that bot list, but it does allow you to see what's going on at the cost of server calls. So it's kind of what you need it to do.
Yeah, you can, similar to Jeff, we have a Vista rule that separates out internal traffic. This could be internal traffic or bot traffic, or it could be bad bot traffic or good bot traffic, right? Like Googlebot is a good bot, or it could be legitimate customers. Like Jen said, I would probably try to get as much information as you can, pull the IP, there are known lists you can check for bots. You can also open a ticket with Adobe Client Care, and they can pull a lot of the raw processing data and see what, I'm going to use the wrong word here, but domains they align to. It's probably something other than domains, but they've done that for us before. They say like, oh, this is a bot, and we know this because this, but it's not something probably I could have gotten straight out of Workspace. So I would open a ticket with Client Care. I would get as much information you can, like the IP, and try to look up against those various tables. There's a lot of sites out there that have them. And then if it's traffic you want to exclude, there's some different options. They mentioned a few of them. You can exclude by IP, or you could create like a virtual report suite type situation where if you still want to monitor that traffic, but you don't want to have it mixed in with all your customer data, you can create a virtual report suite, maybe not by the IP, you'd have to look up the rules, but on some characteristics and have it go there instead, or create a Vista rule with Client Care too.
I almost wonder if you could get sneaky and use your marketing channels to
Maybe, yeah.
to figure it out too. I'm just thinking about that, looking at I'm just thinking referring URLs as I'm starting to think, I might start looking for where it's coming from, just looking through my marketing channels and trying to figure out where it's going as well.
Yeah.
As a hack or a dirty way to kind of ferret it out first. So yeah, I mean, you might just kind of look there first if you're just trying to maybe get a rough idea as to what's happening. So
yeah, and just following up on what Megan said about virtual report suites, several years ago, I kind of went that route. I actually have 100% of my reports built off of a virtual report suite, which basically is what I've called the same name as my main report suite, but clean. And I've created a clean segment where if I get any sort of, weird bot that has come in and inflated data that I can identify with a segment, or maybe our developers released something bad that caused an inflation. We actually had one where they decided that they were going to refresh the page between breakpoints, and the developers missed it by 1 pixel. So everyone loading our website with an iPad got into an infinite loading loop. So it ran for an entire weekend, and we had so much traffic from that. But essentially, I created a segment to try and exclude those reloads on iPad, between those particular dates, so that I could get it out of our main reports, so that when I pulled my monthly reports, I wasn't pulling that inflated data. So basically, all of our reports are now pulled off of this clean data. And if I find something is wonky, I go back, adjust my segment, and now all my reports are updated. So I don't have to go and say, oh, well, now everyone has to go and add this particular exclusion to every single report in the system. No, once it's built off the clean suite and I update my segment, everyone gets the data. So it is a little bit of a significant undertaking to go about, because all your reports, your existing reports, are off your physical suite instead of a virtual. So it does take a little bit of time to get everything switched over, but it's sort of like future-proofing it for down the road.
All right. It doesn't look like we have any other questions. So I think we can wrap up. If you have any questions outside of these office hours, you can always post them on Experience League. A bunch of us are there, and we would be happy to answer those questions. And as I mentioned at the top of the hour, this session is recorded, so you can go back and review some of our responses on the Adobe Analytics User Group YouTube channel, and it should be posted shortly after the session. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our champions, and we'll see you next month. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for hosting us so well.